Dazzler at Race Centre here, guys, and today we're going to talk about auto tuners. I guess because this particular job we're doing at the moment has highlighted a topic that we've wanted to cover for ages on this, about auto tuners. So I thought we'd put this video together. First thing to know is there's quite a lot of different types of auto tuners, different brands out there. Some that work with piggyback units such as Bazzaz and Power Commanders, some that work with ECUs when you're doing ECU tuning and so on, like the Woolwich product have some auto tuners and things like that. The first thing you probably need to know is that some of them are great and some of them not so much, and it doesn't necessarily always depend on the brand of them. It can also depend on the type of bike, ECU and things like that. The one I'm going to start with and focus on today is this Bazzaz unit, because it's on this particular job. And as a rule of thumb, these as an auto tuner, when you're doing a tune, are actually quite awesome. They get to their target air fuel ratio pretty quickly and do a really, really great job. However, as is in this particular case, occasionally they fail. Or they get a bit old, or their reading's a little bit out, and that's what the case is with this guy today. So I thought I'd cover the topic. First thing I guess there is, like some people may think that, if you put a unit on and then you just put an auto tuner and you can go to the racetrack or ride around, that you just never need to worry about it again. As I said, these units, they can fail. Any wideband O2 sensor, oxygen sensor, actually an extremely complicated instrument. There's chemical reactions going on inside this to give you your O2 readings, and they fail over time. We at the moment, I think in the workshop we have about 5 of these O2 sensors. We've got actually 2 plugged into this bike right now. Because I thought it'd be a good example to show here, and we had there's 2 bungs in there in this exhaust, and occasionally you'll get an O2 sensor start to play up or start to give some false readings. There's ways you can tell that, and it's time for it to go. So you can never think about one of these O2 sensors as put it into your exhaust, set it and forget it. If you're going to go down the auto tune path and have an auto tuner and you're going to rely on it solely, then you're going to need to keep maintenance of that auto tune unit itself, and to be able to have a facility to be able to check that it's doing the right thing. So if I give you an example, let's say we do a manual dyno tune on this bike, which is actually what we've done because that unit's failed. The bike came in with the auto tuner, and we go to different racetracks at different times of the year. Yes, the ambient temperature and humidity and stuff will vary, but these bikes, they adjust themselves well enough where you don't really need to worry about retuning it. To be honest, like if you've got, unless you've, and we'll touch on it, unless you've got a really, really specific reason to need the auto tuner, if you get a really good dyno tune by somebody that you trust, you shouldn't have to worry about the tune again until you, unless you let the maintenance of your bike go down, or you change the exhaust, or you change something else. It's a kind of set and forget thing. It's not going to, particularly through the ECU, it's not going to lose its tune. So the idea of having an auto tuner that you're constantly at the track tuning, that's actually quite a lot of work. And there's also opens up areas for things to go wrong. So, based on our experience, we've operated a long time with auto tuners, without them. We've used them in our race team. We've done things where we've done, like I said, the base tune on the dyno. Then we actually go to the track and we test and we run an auto tuner. We've done all heaps of R&D about seeing the differences and what they do. And the reality is, if you do a good tune on the dyno, if you're auto tuning, you're then going to the track and it's making massive changes, you've got to start to asking questions. It shouldn't be like that. It should actually be just trimming it up. I think for the average Joe that's trying to have their track bike or road bike and want it tuned real nice and that type of thing, it's actually better to get a nice stable tune on a dyno and just leave it alone rather than use an auto tuner. Some people may disagree with that, and that's fine. I'll give you a couple of reasons why that we think that auto tune doesn't really belong on bikes in the field. Again, for starters, they can fail. Right, so any electronic unit you put into your bike, an extra item, over time it can fail. So you need to bear that in mind, so you need to be monitoring it. So that's one reason, it adds that risk of failure. Two, it's another module on your motorbike. That's more clutter underneath the tank and inside all your wiring that you don't really need. That's another reason that we wouldn't really recommend that you run one. And another way to look at it is, if you're in an aeroplane that's got autopilot, would you take the pilot out? Would you be confident enough to completely get rid of your pilot? Sure, they might rely on it a little bit, but a pilot or a pilot that's being aware will see when things aren't going right and can switch it off. It's the same with these units. If you're going to run one in your bike, you constantly need to monitor it. If you're doing track days, every few sessions you'll need to look at it, make sure it's not doing anything silly. So you just feel that there's probably better things you could be doing with your time in a track day than monitoring an auto tune. Then there might be some people with the argument, well, that's fine if I've had my bike dynoed, but I don't want to have my bike dynoed. I want to install an auto tune and do it all myself. The issue with that is that, as I said, these oxygen sensors, sometimes they play up. And the other thing a dyno does that's difficult to do in the real world, the dyno, for example, if it's asking for a fueling change, that the bike seems too rich, so we're going to pull fuel out. If we do that, because this is what the AFR sensor is seeing, when we do the next run, we've got a very, very robust tool that's giving very, very accurate measurements, telling us whether we're making power or not. So if I'm getting the fuel curve better, but I'm losing horsepower, it's telling me something's wrong. And that's one of the key ways you know that an AFR sensor is playing up. And that's, like I said, why we have spare ones. Because what we'll do if we have that situation is we'll plug another AFR sensor in and go, hang on a second, that AFR sensor is actually telling us lies. So when you have an instrument or a tool that gives you multiple parameters like power and torque, and you've got the AFR sensors as well, you've got a lot more factors, and you've got a lot more bits of information that are telling you whether you're on the right track. In the real world, yeah, you might be able to feel a lack of power, but generally when you start to feel it, right, you're actually gone quite a long way past where you should be. So auto tuners are a great thing. They're a great invention. They do have a place. Like taking a really well tuned motorcycle, then having one on there, and then if you've got somebody that's available to constantly monitor it, or if you're that way inclined and you want to constantly monitor it and get small little gains, sure, that's where it has a place. But if you're worrying about tiny fueling changes at a racetrack rather than what your tyre pressures are, all sorts of other things, there's so much more to focus on than making fine adjustments. I think it's a little bit misplaced. Sure, in a bigger race team that has the staff to oversee this type of stuff, and they're trying to get every little bit they can, it makes sense. But whether you choose to run one or not, you should at least be aware of the things that can go wrong with them. They won't last forever. Some brands are better than others. There are some, like I said, the Bazaz one that's failed on this particular bike, and this is the actual second Bazaz we've seen in here in the last 3 months that wasn't working properly. However, I don't want to bag them because they do a great job, and I've seen so many that work well, and when they are working, they're awesome. There are some other brands that they're, like, to be honest, like there's some auto tuners that I've seen that are absolutely terrible. So be aware of it if you're going to get into that. We've ended up doing a manual tune on Scott's bike here. This one was, as I said, it came in, already had it. We started the tune, and I knew straight away, just through experience, that the auto tune was playing up. So we've pulled it off, done a manual tune. But they're just some things to consider if you're thinking about whether you should put an auto tune on your bike or not.